When it comes to the system with the most homebrew games, the Atari 2600 wins hands down. The appeal of making a small yet tight, almost arcade-like experience on a system with such strict hardware limitations is a fun challenge to many developers. That much is obvious. I mean, seriously, most systems at best have maybe 10, 15 homebrew games, whereas the Atari has easily over 100. So here are 25, arbitrarily chosen, 2600 homebrew titles to look at. First up, we have Amoeba Jump. This is basically a Noodle Jump clone, if you remember that game. It's pretty decent. Nothing stands out. The best part here is probably the cute-looking character that has something like 5 colors, so they're probably using 2 objects there. The only thing really missing here is that the screen doesn't pan back down when you fall, so there's kind of some artificial difficulty with that, which I don't like too much, but otherwise it's okay. Now here's an original idea. Stay Frosty is a platformer where you have to stamp out these fires with your body, but they melt you, so you have to constantly be collecting ice. So it's kind of this back and forth between, should I collect ice now or should I do it later? It's this kind of managing system going on. You kind of have to manage your ice. I love how he gets surprised when he melts. I love the little expressions when he melts. There's a little trail behind him when he really gets down there. The character is just so clean. It has really big points in the presentation. And who knew? Christmas? Why would you turn out something this good for Christmas? I mean, that's like a month you're going to play this. But anyway, it's a really good experience. Starfire, or really Star Wars, is basically Battlezone meets outer space, and it's all about shooting these TIE fighters here. These faux 3D experiences on the 2600 never really held up to me. Maybe they do to other people, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like a complete experience. There's not a lot to do. Also, you're missing the TIE fighter sounds and all the Star Wars sounds. That's definitely a big deal breaker for me. I will say the title animation is cool, though. That is cool, but there's not a lot to this one. Alright, so this is Jammed. This is basically a video game version of the Rush Hour puzzle game, if you've ever seen that. You have several cars blocking your car from getting to the exit, and the only rule is that you can only slide those cars forward or backward. The Atari version is completely accurate gameplay-wise, just the other cars are only rendered as simple cubes instead of, cars. I'm sure that's a technical limitation, but this is the perfect type of thing to translate to the Atari. And it's the only digital version of this game I have ever found, which is kind of odd. But yeah, it's a good time. Bomb on Pixel City. The best part of this game is definitely the title. And that's not because the title's super creative, that's just because the game kind of sucks. Very simple game. You're just bombing things into oblivion. It has a really ugly title screen, which is odd for these homebrew games because they put a lot of pride into that. This one's kind of a clunker, really. There is no challenge here. There's birds, I guess, and there's like one gun that comes at you, but you can't lose, really. There's even this glitch that when you die, you can still bomb things while you're going down, and that's kind of funny. The graphics are really, really meh. Maybe I'm spoiled on Stay Frosty, but the bombs do make different sounds considering what altitude you're at, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, this one is, I'd pass over this one. I mean, I get what they're going for, but yeah, not a good execution. Duck Attack. Alright, that has to be the best title of any of the games on here. This is one of the few ones that has some humor to it, at least I think. You can't really tell. This is based off adventure, but now the dragons are much less intimidating and more realistic ducks. And they even have a duck noise, and that sounds pretty good. They can't seem to hurt people, though, really. These games are definitely an acquired taste. These like early adventure games, you really have to know what you're doing beforehand before you jump into this. But I'm pretty sure it's about collecting eggs. That's what I've gathered. I'm pretty sure it's about that. Alright, so this is Zippy the Porcupine, and this is by far the most ambitious of the homebrews I've seen. It attempts to take the entire first Sonic game and convert it to 2600 format. There's even 4 zones, there's music for all of them, there's even that waiting animation when you're not using them. Obviously, they cheated the cartridge size, it's like 64K, when a normal game is probably 8K. It doesn't play that well, though, that's its biggest weakness. It's an imitation without trying to be fun on its own, so it's more of a curiosity. Look at it, but definitely don't try to finish it, that seems like that would be painful. Speaking of things that shouldn't exist on the 2600, how about Mario? Alright, so this is Princess Rescue, and it appears that this is the entire original Super Mario Brothers in 8-bit form, 4-bit form. I don't know what Atari was. Is Atari half of the NES? I mean, this feels like half the NES, but unlike Zippy, this gets the gameplay mostly right. It's actually okay to play. I found myself playing this one much longer than Zippy. It's almost fun. Not a huge fan of these D-makes, but they did it mostly right. It feels like you're playing Mario. You got Goombas, you got Koopas, you even got those shell guys that appear later, different music here and there, all the power-ups are in the game, even the star. One cool thing is that Bowser Jr. appears as a boss. It's kind of unexpected, but it plays really well. But yeah, overall, this game seems much more comfortable with itself, and at the same time, it's truer to the original game. So, it does the best it can do. Alright, this one is really good. This is Crazy Balloon. It's a puzzle game with a bit of a twist. So, basically, you can't touch any of the edges, but the balloon is constantly moving back and forth. So it's all about timing and precision when you go through these tight spaces here. It's a really, really great idea. I really liked it. It's super hard, though, so just be ready for that. But it's everything an Atari game can be. It's this unique idea in this really minimalist format. It was a really big winner for me. Here's another really good puzzle game. This is Astar or Astar, I don't know how to say it. It's basically like those ice puzzles in the old Pokemon games where you have to slide from wall to wall, but it's an entire game, and you have Pac-Man here sliding around. The only thing that really changes it up, but it is a really big thing, is this controllable square here. If you press the button, lets you move the square, so you can set up ways to get Pac-Man into unreachable areas otherwise without it. Really nice idea, kind of a perfect little puzzle game. And it's much easier than Crazy Balloon. You can't really lose. Now this one's almost like a dungeon crawler, as much as the Atari can handle that. So this is Skeleton Plus. So I guess the original Skeleton was a bit too hard from what I heard, but this one's plenty hard enough. So you gotta chase these skeletons around. So you have like a taser or something you can hit them with. And it's pretty hard to comprehend what's going on at times. There are sound cues. The louder the sound gets, the closer the skeleton is. And there is continuity of the space, if that makes sense. You can see me follow the skeleton around corners here. There is actual space in this game, which is super... I don't even know how they did that. Super complex concept for this system. And it does work, sorta. So Snappy is very simple, even as Atari games go. It's all about getting that guy to the vine at the right time and making sure the crocodile doesn't eat him. You just press a button and he runs. So you have to get that timing right. And you'll see he spawns at different distances, kind of shakes it up. Very basic, but it's only 2 kilobytes. That's the size of the entire game. That's probably the smallest game on here. You could run this on like a calculator or something. That's how small it is. It's pretty impressive. Medieval Mayhem is a souped-up, ultra version of Warlords, and if you're looking at Atari Homebrew, I hope you know what that is. But if you don't, it's basically a 4-player Pong where you have to make sure your castle and the walls defending it don't get hit by the fireball here. The graphics are clean, but by far the best-looking thing in the entire game is that dragon that starts off every round. I have no idea how they did that, but it's very, very well done. One of the best things I've seen on the system. There's even an option menu, which is something I haven't seen in an Atari game before. This is one of those few multiplayer experiences on the Atari. It's 4-player too, so that's pretty unique. It's not easy at all. Eventually, extra fireballs get added. The CPU is super tough, so you can guess who I am here by who's losing. It's really great, though, and make sure you have 4 people, because that's really what makes it fun. Reindeer Rescue is a runner, which isn't something you see a lot on this system, but it kind of works out. Santa looks pretty good. He's well animated. The music in the first level is a bit out of tune, which is kind of annoying, but it seems pretty hard to program sound for this thing. You have to really know what's going on or else you're out of luck. You almost have to memorize the track in some ways, because you can get stuck. It's a lot harder than it looks. Maybe I just suck at it. When picking these out, I noticed there's a lot of Christmas homebrew. Although this will be the weakest of the Christmas homebrew that I show, it's the weakest of a group of pretty dynamite games, so, I mean, take that as you will. This is Halo 2600. This is probably the most curious game on here. It was made by a Microsoft employee, I think a really high-ranking one, too, like the vice president of something or another. It basically crams all of Halo 1 into this little micro experience. You even get the first bits of the theme here, you get the animated Halo graphic, it's really great. The grunts are here, the elites are here. It's pretty interesting seeing how much was crammed in. Man, this thing is such a better Doodle Jump clone than Amoeba Jump. Not only does it play like a dream with its smooth movement and the ability to go back down after a fall, but it kind of looks like a dream too. I mean, like, really. It's one of the few Atari games that has to be, like, considered stylized or something. Everything's really well animated. The bunny feels like it has 30 frames to that falling animation. You really forget the restraints holding it back here, and I think that shows how well it's made. Really, really good work on this one. No video on Atari Homebrew would be complete without Pac-Man 4K. There's nothing really special about it, it's just standard Pac-Man. What makes it really amazing is the context. So this is the fan-made Homebrew Pac-Man, and this is the official Pac-Man released by Atari. It's just amazing to me that not only can enthusiasts make their own games for a system, they can make them better than the official retailer for that system. And it is kind of cheating. The official version of Pac-Man was rushed considerably, but it does answer what Pac-Man would look like on the Atari if it was fully realized. Blinky Goes Up, which is a really fun title. A pretty standard vertical platformer, but I think what stands out here is the execution. Graphically, it's very clean. The controls are some of the best. And it just has this kind of smooth look to it, kind of in Bellhopper, where everything's really nicely animated. It kind of feels like it has its own identity, it almost like its own rules, its own art style almost. It just is very consistent and very thought through. Alright, you know it's going to be good if the music's in tune. This is by far the best of the Christmas homebrew games. Maybe of all of the homebrew games here. Basically, you paint these toys as they go on a conveyor belt, and you have to paint them a specific color. So, like, the AT-ATs are supposed to be, like, gray. The trumpets are yellow. Some of them even have two colors, like the peppermints are white and red, obviously. There's, like, Lincoln Logs that are brown and green. Getting all of them before the timer runs out lets you go to the next day. You're trying to get to the 25th of December, obviously. So it's this count up from the 1st to the 25th, which I loved that. Really great, really unique. I'm surprised I haven't seen anything like this in like an official game. Nothing stands out on its own because everything is an A. The presentation is an A. The music is an A. The gameplay is an A. This might be my favorite game on the Atari, whether homebrew or not, honestly. Toyshop Trouble is a really fun time. Holy crap, this is a perfect sequel. Stay Frosty 2 has the same core mechanics, but now it's much harder. You got Firebirds, you got hot floors, you got moving platforms, and you got power-ups. You got a carrot that puts a little carrot on your nose and lets you throw snowballs, but who really cares about that? You got a carrot on your nose. The broom lets you double jump. There's a couple other power-ups. I think there's a pipe. The snowman is even more expressive than he is in the first game, and he's by far my favorite character on the Atari. I really like him. He bobs at the beginning to the music. He does all these cool little things. Speaking of the music, there's different music for every stage, and it sounds way better than normal Atari music. I don't know how they did that. It spoils normal Atari music because it sounds so good. I would say the gameplay is the best out of all the games, but Toyshop Trouble is just a bit too unique. It has some unique points that this thing can't top. Although this game is a really solid experience. It does kind of cheat though. The cartridge is like 30K. So it's not zippy big, but it's still like 3 times the size of a normal Atari cartridge. But hey, this is probably the closest to an NES type quality game on the Atari system. Gunfight is high-octane action. It's a shootout where you have to drop the opponent before he drops you. It's executed really well. The best thing here was allowing each person 2 bullets at the same time, as it really ups the action. You can get them trapped by shooting your second bullet in front of your first one. You can bounce your bullets around and catch them by surprise that way. There's a lot of things you can do here. There are tons of extra modes, stages. The other gunman can be a CPU or a real person. Other than the standard shootout mode, my favorite is the runaway mode, or whatever, I'm calling it the runaway mode, where it's basically open season on the other poor guy as his gun gets taken away. Lots of content here. By far the most twitchy Atari game I've seen. As a polar opposite in tone to Gunfight, L.E.M. is very slow and precision-oriented. You have to land this spaceship here on the base very, very carefully. There's this time limit as you'll run out of gas. A lot of the difficulty is just in the controls, just controlling this very... It's probably on purpose that it's obtuse, but you're just controlling this very bulky system. And you do have to avoid asteroids and some other small things like that. It's very much about the controls and wrestling with that, and it's alright. If you're tired of Noodle Jump clones, well, this is the anti-Noodle Jump clone. This is Man Goes Down, and it's all about, well, going down. The funny thing here is that the platforms here kind of save you at the beginning and let you plan your next move, but eventually, once the speed starts picking up, they almost become your enemy, because the faster it goes, the more likely you are to get caught at the top, and not the bottom, actually. I love the skate... How far has someone gone down in this game? So Fall Down, I had to put it on here because it's so similar to Man Goes Down, but the things it changes make it so different. Basically the same concept, you're trying to get down, except it's 2-player, and now the hole's only, yay big, and now you get points on who gets through the hole first. So it changes the tone of the game completely. Also, there's this little power-up thing that gets you faster, and that's good at, leveling the field. But it's just so interesting at how small changes to the exact same idea, basically, can make a completely new game. Alright, so this is Oystron, and I don't really know how to pronounce it, but I'm just going to stick with that pronunciation. My favorite thing about this game is actually the name, because the gameplay and the name have the exact same reaction. What is Oystron? The gameplay is unique, to say the least. It's a horizontal shooter that is a lot easier than it looks. All of those rocks, which are actually oysters, can't really hurt your side, but you can break them open to create walls for your base. And all the other enemies take down those walls, so it's a trade-off between shooting the enemies and building up your walls by breaking the oysters. It's almost like Missile Command, but you can repair your base. It's really interesting. It's really great. But it does take a little bit to get the hang of, and very fun, very unique. Haven't seen anything like it anywhere else, and it's a great note to end on for this list.